thanks to the Fowlers for opening their garden gates for us. And right now we're going to be talking about the ultimate garden plant. Did that get your attention? I bet it did. My guest is Michael Shoup from the Antique Rose Emporium. Welcome back to Central Texas Gardener. Always great to see you, Michael.
Thank you, Tom. Good to be here.
So you're calling roses the ultimate garden plant, and that roses scare some folks, but we're going to be talking about a different take on roses.
Well, it's exactly right. I mean, I don't know how many years now it's been, 25 or more, and the message is still not out there. People still have a bias against roses. They think that they're tough. They think that they're fussy. And indeed, some of the modern roses are, and are tough, and are difficult, and don't live from year to year. But man, we've got a group of roses with the old garden roses that are just tougher than nails. They give you such unbelievable qualities like bloom and color and fragrance. Right. And they can be harnessed by the gardener to do whatever they want. And so many people are afraid to get in there and manipulate these roses or touch them and actually, you know, make them conform to their garden. But that's the one thing that roses love to have done to them. They love to be sheared and shaped and trained. And in so doing, you can fit them perfectly to the scale of your garden, for whatever scale there might be.
And putting them in places that people don't expect either. I mean, it doesn't have to be our grandmother's concept of a rose garden is this place apart only for the roses, right? Well,
exactly. The concept of having a rose garden is tossed out the door with the old roses. If you put these roses in a rectangular bed, you'd be perplexed by the array of shapes and sizes. It wouldn't work. But in that same token, they're so diverse and they're so different in their shapes and form that they beg to be used in all these different situations, in a water garden as a cascading rose, or on a arbor, or as just a big chunky shrub to create hedges with. There are so many different applications.
Well, and I love your use of the phrase harnessing these plants, because I know a lot of people they think, oh, I can only do this with the rose. I have to prune it perfectly. I have to go study a 50-page dictionary or, you know, something to understand how to prune.
That's right. I mean, many of the shrub roses can be harnessed in a matter of seconds with the head shears.
And shears on a rose?
Exactly. You don't have to use pruners. They're not pruned in the same way that the hybrid teas are. They're used as landscape or garden plants. And in that token, you shape them to fit the configuration of the garden that you're using them in. So, for instance, Old Blush. You could have Old Blush adorning a split rail fence. And in so doing, you would cut that rose down to the top rail, probably in Labor Day or in the fall, and also in early spring before the new growth. And in so doing, you get the blooms to embellish that split rail fence at the perfect scale and size.
Right.
That same rose, Old Blush, could be used in a different location, maybe in a larger part of your garden, and therefore be allowed to get 6 feet, which it will do.
Right.
So you don't want to let that rose get 6 feet by the split rail fence. It'll dwarf that fence. It'll do exactly the opposite of what you wanted.
Treat it like boxwood, in other words.
Exactly. Ligustrum and boxwood. So these roses, you know, they really love to be touched and worked upon and harnessed and whatever. It makes them respond, and they give you so much in return.
Well, you mentioned, let's talk about some of the different uses and ways of harnessing the plants. You referenced the Old Blush and using that for a hedge, and we had a gorgeous illustration of that at the Antique Rose Emporium. Another one that could easily get out of hand for people if they just let it do its thing is Lamarck, which is this is a rose I've used before. I love the fragrance on it, the tea rose fragrance. But again, people get intimidated by climbing roses.
Well, and that's probably one of our biggest calls to the nursery is, you know, I planted one of your climbing roses, and yes, it's successful. It's so successful that it's, you know, it's grabbing children off the street, you know. But that's just it. These roses are going to be successful, and they are going to send runners out. They're going to try to be chaotic. It is up to the gardener, the garden artist, if you will, to take every available cane, train it on that structure that they put that there to adorn, and in so doing, tidy it up. Now, if there are canes that can't be trained, cut them off. You harness the rose, make sure you, in your mind's eye, had it there for that particular embellishment. You make sure you do that. And don't make a chaotic situation. I will say that climbers are most of the effort in our garden. We have hundreds of shrubs in our garden, and we may only have dozens of climbers, but the climbers take the most work. but they create the most awe-inspiring part of the garden. The
Right.
oohs and ahs, the romance, the drama, and that's what's so amazing about the climbers.
Right.
And Lamarck is a perfect example of that.
Well, you also brought an illustration of one that is used as a tree in your garden with the support of a metal framework, and this is the Peggy Martin rose,
Yes.
right?
You know, Peggy Martin has got a lot of timeshare, if you will, this last year because it was a rose introduced by Peggy Martin, who lost her parents in the hurricane, and this is a rose that survived at that location. It has been used by, I think Dr. Welch had used it to introduce to several nurseries. One of we were one of the participants to grow this rose, and it's such a fast grower. And in 2 years, it's completely encased this metal tree that we built at the Rose Emporium. And now people are sitting underneath it getting their picture taken. And it's just in 2 years' time, and it's glorious the way it blooms.
Well, these are all spectacular illustrations of roses that perform particular tasks for us in the garden, whether creating trees, climbing on arbors, creating a hedge. One thing that you've been focusing on a lot in recent years is kind of simplifying the way that you treat the roses in terms of fertilizing and things like that. Again, very intimidating for a lot of people. If they look at a lot of garden books, the instructions can be a little bit overwhelming to them. They think that there's no way they can master this. But you've got it down to a very simple science, and you really don't use fertilizer.
No, we've quit using synthetic fertilizers.
Yeah.
With the idea that the living soil is what you want to promote. And it's like mimicking what Mother Nature does. You don't see people out there fertilizing the forest, and yet the forest is happy. It's because they recycle the leaves, the fodder, the bark, and everything back to the forest floor. And that granular organic material is the food for microbes. We mimic that in our gardens. We actually embellish it. And we've added just nothing but hardwood bark mulches in great amounts, 2 to 3 inches, 2 or 3 times a year in our beds. And we have created a wonderful soil. And in addition, spraying an aerobic compost tea, which is nothing more than trying to produce good guys in bigger numbers and spraying it onto the foliage of these things, we've actually inoculated the soil and the plant with the types of microorganisms that protect the plant, that fertilize the plant, and in so doing, we have very little black spot, mildew pressures. Red spiders are essentially gone. It's completely transformed the way we do things.
Well, I just think that it makes so much sense, and it's so encouraging to hear the results on the scale that you're gardening at. And, I often think that the organic approach to gardening is actually a lot simpler. And that's another thing that people think organic gardening, you have to do this and you have to do that. No. It's really simply paying attention to the health of the soil. And the use of mulch and compost tea in combination, it couldn't get a lot simpler than that, really.
Well, it is. It's really trying to replicate what Mother Nature does, and she defaults to health. She wants her plants to live, and she's never put some guy there fertilize him all the time to do it. So what we want to do is mimic that, and I think we have done that by just embellishing kind of what she does and being observant that way. And so it's really worked out for us. Anecdotally, we see a lot of results that way.
Now, a little while ago, I referenced the fact that mixing these plants into other kinds of plantings as well, not segregating them, putting them out and mixing them in. We have an image that shows them mixed with opuntias and manfreda and yucca. And this is one of your own creations, this particular rose, but this is the way that you really encourage people to use them.
Yes, there's no rose gardens in our gardens. There's gardens, many different theme gardens with roses in them. And in so doing, you are an artist. You can go out there and have a xeric garden with these plants that don't necessarily need the water. Roses thrive in these conditions, and most people never would have thought that.
That's true.
They also thrive in the water garden where they're by water's edge and create these wonderful fountains. And as we learn the different varieties of these old roses, they tell you how to be used in the garden. And so this is essentially what we've embellished at our gardens, the Rose Emporium.
I just want to speak to my own experience. I was sharing this with you a short while ago, is that in my last garden, I had one bed that was extremely hot, very xeric, no irrigation. I planted a Cramoisie superior. There was an old garden variety.
The old China.
And that plant has just taken over the world. And I guess I need to go in there and harness it a bit. But
well, you don't unless it's starting to swallow up your chairs and things. But that's the beauty about these roses, is they can be taken down so that they fit to the scale appropriate to that garden setting.
Right. Well, I'm sure that you have lots of other great tips that people can harness themselves. Real quickly, tell people how to find the Antique Rose Emporium.
Well, we are a website nursery. We sell roses through the internet throughout the nation, but I'm most proud of our 2 retail centers. One is in San Antonio, off of Evans Road, off the northeast side, near in between New Braunfels and San Antonio, and the other, of course, is in Brenham, a little community called Independence, Texas, and in both of them we love to garden.
Well, people will find you either way, either in those beautiful retail stores or on the web at Antique Rose Emporium. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Always a pleasure.
It's always fun catching up with you, Mike. Continued best luck at the Antique Rose Emporium. Coming up next, it's Daphne Richards.